Did you know that two of Mass Effect's villains, the Elusive Man and Saren Arterius, are connected much more deeply than the games tell us? The origin stories for these characters are closely tied together, dating back as far as the First Contact War, and putting them in touch with an unfathomably dangerous enemy. If you want to know the Elusive Man and Saren's full story, you'll find it in the comic book Mass Effect Evolution. In this video, I'll tell you a bit about the comic and then give recommendations on whether or not it's worth reading. For your convenience, this video is divided into chapters. The review section will contain spoilers for Evolution and some light spoilers for the Mass Effect trilogy, so watch with caution. Mass Effect Evolution is a prequel comic and origin story for several of the series' primary antagonists. It features a story by Mac Walters, a script by John Jackson Miller, art by Omar Francia with Manuel Silva, colors by Michael Atiyeh, and lettering by Michael Heisler. It tells the story of Jack Harper, the leader of a small band of human mercenaries investigating a strange discovery made by the Turians on the human colony Shang-Chi during the closing days of the First Contact War. His mission takes him to places that humans, who are newcomers to the wider Milky Way galaxy at this point, have yet to visit, and forces him to contend with the most fearsome agents in the Turian military. Little do they know that the mysterious artifact from Shang-Chi poses a threat to them all. Evolution is a really intriguing story in the Mass Effect universe. It compellingly sets up the series' main antagonists, providing them with a rich, somewhat complex backstory that gives more depth to their motives than in the games. The artwork is awesome, showing off stunning landscapes that faithfully depict classic locations from the games and planets that we don't get to see when playing as Commander Shepard. In general, I recommend this comic to anyone who loves Mass Effect, but I do have some specific considerations and folks in mind that would benefit most from picking up this comic book. Fans of the series who are really interested in the First Contact War should definitely give Evolution a read. It paints a pretty distinct picture of the attitudes and perspectives held by humanity and the Turians in the earliest days of their relationship. It's interesting to see how far they have grown by the time of the first Mass Effect game. Without getting into spoilers, the Mass Effect games have incredibly iconic villains that hit all the right notes. Unfortunately, they get precious little screen time. Evolution gives these characters much more time in the spotlight, which enhances their portrayal in the games. If you're looking to know more about the series' villains, Evolution is a great place to find it. If you've read and enjoyed the novel Revelation, then you'll likely enjoy reading Evolution. These two stories play together very subtly, but enhance the reading experience for both books, particularly if you read Evolution first, then Revelation. With that in mind, if you're planning on reading the Mass Effect novels, I recommend beginning with this comic book. Evolution is featured in the Mass Effect Complete Comics collection, which I generally recommend to all Mass Effect fans. But it's also available separately, which could be a better decision for folks only interested in this one comic. Evolution is a stellar Mass Effect story. It has an intriguing setting, fantastic characters, and a compelling plot with terrific attention to thematic development. Setting stories in or around the time of the First Contact War is a surefire way to make things interesting. The inherent awe at humanity discovering they are a small part of a very large and established galaxy is ripe with storytelling potential, even beyond the baseline conflict between humans and Turians. Some of this potential comes in the form of remarkable discoveries, such as the Arca Monolith. Several times in the comic, Jack mentions Arthur C. Clarke's famous adage about highly advanced technology seeming like magic, and this principle is at the center of much of what happens in Evolution. Humanity is new to the wider Milky Way galaxy, so a lot of what they observe of the other races feels like magic because it is so advanced compared to their own tech. When they arrive on Ilium, Eva mentions feeling overwhelmed at the city and wonders how humanity will ever catch up to the rest of the alien races. This is the point where the perspectives of Evolution's protagonist, Jack, and the antagonist, Decius, diverge. Jack sees tech like the Arca Monolith logically, recognizing its inherent danger. Rather than being enamored by its abilities, which seem pretty magical, Jack tries to understand what the artifact is and why it was created. It takes some time, but he eventually realizes it's a trap made to warn its creators of intelligent life forms. With the clue that there is a more advanced race out there in the galaxy, Jack refocuses his efforts to protect humanity by founding Cerberus and becoming the Elusive Man. When Decius sees the Arca monolith, he recognizes its power immediately and seeks a means to harness it for himself. He is too awed by its potential that he fails to take the time to understand the science that fuels the artifact, almost like someone who falls victim to magic. It puts Decius in opposition to the qualities that helped propel Turians to space. Evolution mentions that the Turians abandoned their legends and mythologies when they discovered space travel. It's an intriguing notion that firmly roots them as forward-thinking, not willing to be held down by old beliefs and traditions that emphasize mysticism, and instead favors the science that leads to the progression of the species. When Decius returns to Palaven with the Arca monolith, he invokes these myths to stoke the ancient religious fervor as a means to persuade other Turians to join him. He even sets up shop in one of the old temples. This ultimately leads to his downfall. Saren, on the other hand, retained a scientific view of the Arca monolith, which gave him a more level-headed perspective than Decius, and gave him the insight to destroy it. Jack remembered that anything that seems like magic is merely advanced technology that is yet to be understood. These two characters go on to be some of the most powerful people in the galaxy, and who drastically shape the plot of the Mass Effect series. Evolution's message, then, is that true power comes from understanding. Speaking of Jack and Saren, I also want to highlight Evolution's incredible characters. As mentioned, Decius is straight up evil. He is so power-hungry that he's willing to let innocent Turians die so he could achieve his goals. He's the perfect villain for a compact story like Evolution. Moreover, learning that he's Saren's brother is really interesting. It puts into perspective details of Saren's character that were mentioned in the novel Mass Effect Revelation. Saren is given a ton of depth in this story. He's willing to step in and stop his brother because he feels for the other Turians who are dying. It shows the honor and devotion to his people that was once at Saren's core before he turned into the monster we see in Mass Effect 1. It's also really cool to discover that Saren's origins are tied to the Elusive Man's. They both survived being affected by the Arca monolith, which altered the course of their lives. It provides a tangible connection between the two that bolsters many of the overlapping ideologies they share, such as the ends justify the means approach they use in many situations. Knowing this event also inspired the birth of Cerberus is really compelling. It hammers home the point that even though the organization is inherently flawed with its prejudiced beliefs, it exists to defend against an incredibly terrifying threat. There is a kernel of truly noble purpose at the core of Cerberus and even Jack Harper, but it's mired with tainted ideologies. This is really interesting to observe in Jack throughout Evolution, making him relatable and easy to sympathize with at some points. It also adds so many more dimensions to his fall into becoming the Elusive Man. I also really enjoyed Ava. She's strong, fierce, and somewhat impulsive. It makes her a very memorable character, and it's cool, and maybe a little weird, to see how Jack keeps her memory alive in the form of Dr. Ava Corey in Mass Effect 3, and in the company that acts as Cerberus' legal front, Cord Hislop Aerospace, which memorializes Ben as well. General Williams is another intriguing side character in this story. His presence confirms Ashley's story from Mass Effect 1 about her grandfather being the commander who surrendered at Shanxi, which is a cool Easter egg to pick up on. I also find it intriguing that he was so close to Jack Harper, providing him support during the First Contact War. It makes me wonder if he had a hand in funding Cerberus, or, at the very least, setting up contacts within the Alliance. This would have interesting implications for Ashley, especially if she ever found out. I had a few specific issues with Evolution that made for small bumps in my reading experience, so I'll mention them here for your consideration. The least of which is the slight oddity of Jack and Eva traveling to Ilium as if they had some foreknowledge of the Terminus system's reputation. It's only been a few weeks since the First Contact War when they travel there, so how do they know these things? On the one hand, it can be reasoned that Jack's interaction with the Arca monolith gave him some familiarity with Ilium, just as it allowed him to learn and speak the Asari language. However, it's Ava who comments on the Terminus systems. I must admit that this is such a tiny nitpick, and it doesn't really affect the story. It's probably just one of those things that we, as readers, just aren't meant to think about. But the details got me hung up for a short time. The only other bump I experienced came from a small detail in Saren's character development. I loved how things panned out, but I admit I have a hard time understanding why Saren feels the need to avenge Decilus's death, or why he blames humans for this. Logically speaking, if Jack and the other humans had not interfered with Decilus's plans, Saren would likely have had to deal with his brother the same way. Maybe he's just looking for something or someone to project his anger on. I'm not entirely sure. If you have any ideas about these issues I mentioned, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you end up checking out Evolution, please leave a comment to let me know what you think, and be sure to put appropriate spoiler warnings for your discussion. If you have any questions about the story or characters, please also feel free to comment below, and I'll try to answer them or get around to them in a future video. If you liked this video, be on the lookout for my coverage of the other Mass Effect novels and comic books. I also have several theory videos coming, so stay tuned. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.